Heavenly Father, today we put on the full armor to protect us against attack. We put on the belt of truth to protect against lies and deception. We put on the breastplate of righteousness to protect our hearts from the temptations. We put the gospel of peace on our feet to walk in your light, peace, and freedom with the Holy Spirit. We rebuke anxious thoughts. We take up your shield of faith for protection to block and destroy all the darts and threats thrown at us by the enemy. We put on the helmet of salvation to cover our minds and thoughts, reminding us that we are children of a mighty King. We are forgiven, set free, saved by the blood of Jesus. We take up the sword of the Spirit, your living word, that has the power to demolish strongholds and is sharper than any double-edged sword. We come to you, Lord, in prayer daily. In Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
What's up, you guys? Welcome to The Imagination. I'm your host, Emma, and this week I'm joined once again with SRA survivor, educator, child abuse advocate, visionary, entrepreneur, and voice for the voiceless, just to name a few, Andi Bond. If you've missed Andi's previous episodes that include her incredible testimony and story of redemption, I'm going to link those in the show notes below for you to go back and go listen to. One of my favorite parts about meeting survivors is getting to know who they are in their hearts and what they discover about themselves later in life after being emancipated from their abusers and their silence. One of the many consistencies with SRA and MK Ultra survivors around the world is that most of them have extremely high IQs, were in gifted and accelerated academic programs, and were born with inherent gifts that were exploited by perpetrators who know of our inherent human divinity. Andi was no different. Having talked about how her own gifts were exploited as a child in previous episodes and on different podcasts, one of my favorite parts about Andi's redemption story is that not only has she taken her power back from those who tried to break and destroy her, but she has compiled knowledge from her own memories and self-research that tap back into the divinity within us all, and is here today to remind us of who we are and to remind us that we are all born special and all born with incredible gifts that would bring us to our knees if we only knew. We are told we live in a physical world, and nothing could be further from the truth. Knowledge of the divine within us has all but been stripped from our Rockefeller education system, and we are told the only things that make us special are the titles we collect from the outside world, such as CEO, boss, seven-figure salary maker, sports car owner, and the list goes on. A crucial part of remembering who we are is learning that we, in fact, live in a spiritual and supernatural world where the truth about who we are has all but been forgotten after decades of suppression. What survivors like Andi know is that the people who run this TV show we call reality know very well the divinity within all of us, and still to this day are using children and humans in experiments to further exploit these gifts in private for their benefit, while telling us publicly that we are nothing special and to get back to work. Andi is here with us today to help us rediscover this hidden knowledge and to share with you all a beautiful presentation she has appropriately labeled "The Human Body is a Resonance Chamber" that will give you an overview and example of how impossibly amazing our bodies and world that we live in truly are. In typical Andi Bond fashion, you are going to learn so much. So grab a pen and paper and give her your full attention. So you guys, without further ado, help me in welcoming back my guest of honor, overcomer, educator, angel to the children, entrepreneur, walking miracle, blessing to this world, and my dear friend, the one, the only, Andi Bond. Hi, Andi.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's such an honor
Thank you.
to have you back on.
I'm really honored to be back, and every single time I almost come to tears when you read an introduction, and I do it almost every time you read for every person. So it's just so beautiful. It's such an honor, and I'm very, very grateful for the work that you're doing, and the opportunity that you give to people like me and so many survivors, and also truth tellers across the globe, really. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Thank you too. Like I said, your stories are so incredible, and that alone could be, the stories that you have and these other survivors could be a freaking blockbuster movie in itself. But what I think is amazing is that that's just such a small piece of who all of you are. And you all have found different ways to take what you went through and turn that pain into something just so beautiful. And we were talking right before we started recording just about how important offering solutions are. This stuff can get dark and heavy. And I think all of us need to turn towards you and other survivors and say, okay, now that we know what's going on, how can we take what now all that information and look at the world in a different way that doesn't seem so hopeless, and that feels like there's things that we can do to feel good where we are. And I've loved having these different conversations after the testimonies come out, where we talk about the things that you've learned and how actually beautiful this information is. It's disgusting how it's being used in private, and that it's literally like they look at all humans, the people that run the world, it's like we're all just these little experiments that they can play on. But the things that they know, if we use them in a holy way that's meant to be divine, the way that God created us to be, these things are so important and amazing to remember. And I think that it helps elevate people out of this fear and trauma mindset of the last few years. Everybody just feels so low vibrational, and this stuff I think is so empowering. It helps us take our power back and say, wait, I'm incredible. And so are all these other people, and why do I feel like I'm not? Why are you telling me I'm not amazing when I am, And so I'm really excited about this conversation because these things make people feel really good inside.
I'm excited as well. And this is a presentation that I put together, and I put it together for a show that I did on Aquarius Rising. And the way that it's structured, I think works really well to explain to people, to give a visual, and also you can hear, visual and um, sonic, I guess, representation of how these things really work. Because the truth is that the people at the top of the structure of our world that are currently, in the control structure and in positions of power and control, they understand very, very, very well how these things work. And um, they have kept a lot of the knowledge that's very empowering for humanity to themselves, and then they utilize it in order to control in specific ways in various forms. But this is going to explain that we are very, very, very much more than what we think that we are. And just to give a little bit of an explanation of how the whole structure works, that actually we do have an amazing God-given gift in our physical body, and the way that it works is so beautiful in the way that we coordinate with the sound and the light of the whole universe, and it really is like a whole symphony. And um, and hopefully you'll be able to see that very clearly. I know I'm speaking a little bit esoterically at the moment, but it'll make sense as we move through forward, I promise.
How did you first get interested in the topic of, I'll just put an kind of an umbrella term like frequency? How is that something that you got curious about and were like, hey, I want to learn a little bit more about this?
um well, first of all, as a child in the experiments that I was used in, involving MK Ultra and SRA, those things cross over. They target children like me that had very, you know, um, heightened spiritual gifts and heightened IQ and things like that. And so, uh, the the first answer to that question is that I physically experience the results of these things. And a lot of a lot of the experiments, and a lot of the weapons, and a lot of the military implications um of of sorry, I'm losing my train of thought for a second, but the implications of these experiments really do work around frequency and sound. Um, you know, and so I was unfortunately on the receiving end of it, but then later as I grew up and as I went through school, I studied engineering in my undergrad. I started out studying aerospace engineering at the University of Colorado, and so I learned a lot about you know, the mainstream version of physics, but then I also was in an entire semester studying black holes, and so I learned a lot about very interesting physics that happens on those levels. Um, and I've also been on just really a quest, studying and learning about various different cultures and various different spiritual lineages, and trying to figure out why they're all arguing and what it's all about. And so I ended up with essentially a master's. It's not an official master's degree from a university, but about 10 years of study of mastery in the knowledge from ancient India that's called Vedic science. Um, so the Vedic sciences are, in fact, sciences of basically the laws of nature and how that all works and how it's all an interplay of light and sound, at the essentially at the quantum level. And when I found out that through my spiritual studies, through my walk with God, and then through learning some of these advanced physics modalities, that they were really all saying so much the same thing. And you cannot take God out of science and vice versa. However, that is really what the mainstream tries to do. Um, so there's a big piece of the puzzle missing, that is the actual frequency and vibration of sound and light and matter, that is basically left out of the mainstream curriculum. I hope that
Yeah,
was.
no, that's great. I was going to bring that up. You've mentioned that before, that things that you personally learned in school versus things that you learned in private experiments had an overlap where they're both on the quest to find the same thing. But like you said, the established school system leaves part of that out on purpose, teach us things that they want us to know. And it's enough info to make people think that they have the full story, but it's not the full story.
Mhm. Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
before we get started on the presentation, what is a resonance chamber temple? What is that exactly?
The way that I like to explain how our human body is designed is literally like an antenna or a temple, or I say a resonance chamber, because our entire body is encoded with actual sound, meaning that um, sounds literally correspond to different parts of our physical body. And I'm going to you'll see a map of that basically. Um, but one of the first things that I learned in studying the ancient sciences, and the ancient sciences that I studied were modalities that helped me to heal from trauma. They were modalities such as breathing, specific patterns of breath that help to reintegrate the nervous system, certain sounds that helped my body heal naturally. It's These are practices that you do, over and over. Meditation, the way that I was taught meditation was to bring the mind basically into a state of stillness so that you can then pray. That's that's what I was taught. Um, the whole purpose of meditation is to bring the mind into a state of calm so that you can actually hear and listen and communicate with God. You then go into prayer. But as I was learning the language of Sanskrit, which really is more of a technology than a language, what I was taught and is that our nervous system has approximately 72,000 subtle nervous channels that go through it called nadis. And where 3 or more of those intersect is called a marma point. We're going to see a map of that. But wherever there's a marma point, there's an actual sound that corresponds to that point in the body. And so when you start these, when we start to go into this, the first example that I like to make that, you know, because this is so foreign to us in our Western way of learning, that sounds correspond to actual parts of the body. The easiest one to first sound to hear is the sound ooh. Ooh corresponds literally to the heart, and you can feel where that sound lives. And that's like, this is not something that you have to believe me. It's not a belief. This is something that you can do and that you can repeat, and you can see that it actually works for yourself. You know, there's a sound that corresponds to the pineal gland that helps to decalcify the pineal gland, for example. So when you learn what these sounds are, you can literally start to, what I started to be able to do with the help and guidance and direction of God, really, is to sing myself back to health in certain ways, you know.
That is so magical. And it's neat. You know, you see kind of the resurgence recently of like sound bowls, and in subtle ways, people are starting to relearn about frequency. It might not be the whole story. It might not be, you know, everything. But I am seeing it start to be talked more, which is really excited about.
Yeah.
So
So
let's
I
bring
hope that answered the question. And
100%. Let's bring this up and kind of get started. So for people watching, you're going to see tons of visuals. And I know that some of our listeners are going to be on Spotify, or can you see that, Andi?
yeah.
Okay, they're going to be on Spotify or iTunes. We're going to talk a lot about what you're going to hear. And I'm also going to link on those platforms my YouTube link right in the show notes. So if you're, say, in your car and you're listening, that's awesome. You're still going to get a lot out of it. But if you want to go back later and see the visuals, you can just go ahead and click on that link. So let's go ahead and get started, Andi.
Yay. Okay. So if you go to the next page, the first TikTok video is really a very good overall high level explanation of what we're going to get into here. So it's a really good place to start that, and then, you know, we're going to tie it all together as we move forward as well.
Perfect. And you let me know too. I'm going to click it and it should start right away. But if for some reason you can't see it on your screen, just let me know and then I'll fix it.
Okay.
Here's a secret that's been kept by cathedrals for a long time.
Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay. I wonder if I can make it, I'll just make it a little bit bigger with my fingers. Here we go. Okay.
Right.
Go back.
Here's a secret that's been kept by cathedrals for a long time. This right here is your DNA. This at the top is your DNA from a top-down view. These geometric shapes that you see is what we call sacred geometry. Sacred geometry is an ancient study that explains energy patterns, like this turtle right here. If you look to the right, what you see here is a sand plate that's connected to some type of instrument that can send out frequency. Now, let's just say the instrument is a piano, and when I hit one of the notes on the piano, it shifts the sand into these specific geometric shapes. This is called cymatics, the study of visible sound. You can also do this with liquids. Now, here's a picture of cymatics in water, top-down view of DNA, and church windows. Notice they are almost identical. Now, how many times have you drove past a church window like this and wondered how the fuck did they come up with that design? They didn't. It's in your DNA. Now, here's something very interesting. Everything has a resonant frequency, which basically means everything has its own frequency. Now, a lady did an experiment where she set up a mic in the church like this and recorded the silence. She then set up speakers to play that silence so that it would go back into the mic and keep creating a louder and louder and louder sound, to the point to where it was strong enough to show up cymatically. Now, when she played that sound through water, it created these shapes cymatically. And to her surprise, the same shape the sound of the church was making was what the shapes of the windows inside the church looked like. There's only one group of people I know who can build at that level. But anyway, I remember buildings have their own resonant frequency, which means that when you're in the building, your body is being interacted with those frequencies. So if your body is made of 60 to 80% water, and this is what water looks like when it's vibrating, that means whatever shape is made by the sound of the church is the shape that your DNA is taking form of. I believe these cathedrals are designed to create healing frequencies to make you feel good when you're inside of the church. This could be part of the reason why people feel good when they enter a church, not realizing the church is emitting its own healing frequency in alignment with the instruments that are being played by uplifting music scales.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So
amazing.
there is so much in that right there. There is so much in that little video right there. But first and foremost, to understand that physical things have an actual energetic shape to them. And when you think of the fact that some of these churches and buildings, and I came across this in India and Bali as well, the way that the buildings are built makes them almost like healing chambers. And why have we not learned about that? Just that. Just that in and of itself is so important to understand, that the shape of the structures that we are in has an effect on the human body. And then you start to think about the fact that we live in cubes. We live in a box, we drive in a box, and then we go to work in a box, in a cube. Tell me anything in nature that has straight lines and or 90-degree angles.
That's a really interesting point.
So I have a real theory about why buildings in the West are built in that structure. I think that it actually traps energy in corners. I think that it's not natural. I think that it creates a disharmonious resonance, the actual structure of the building that affects our physical, mental, and spiritual being as well. So these things have very real world applications.
That's fascinating. I've never even considered that. And you're so right. Like I'm looking around my house right now, like, oh my gosh, everything's 90 degrees and it's a square. Everything. And I
Yeah,
think too, whenever I was watching that, I was thinking, gosh, churches are where you find those massive organ instruments that play and they just have those massive tubes on top that just emanate, whatever note is played within the cathedral. And I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if those were put there for healing, and we just don't use them for that anymore. They play church songs and stuff on it. But I mean, music
I
sounds
believe.
phenomenal when you're in a cathedral. Music is like tantalizing with how it just vibrates through and it just has this electric feeling in your body.
Mm-hmm. And then think about, if you will go start to research how the church organs have been messed with, and then how the musical scale has been messed with, so that it's originally was 432 hertz was I believe the musical note A, but this is very well documented that on purpose the music industry tweaked that from 432 to 440, meaning so that the musical scale is now slightly off, meaning it is now disharmonious with nature. And so all of these things are very powerful. They're very, very real. Which is why it's so important to be aware of what you're taking in the form of sound and music, even. I think the next video gives an explanation further. This is the resonance experiment. This is going to give more of a visual representation, and you can just push play, Emma. I don't think it's too loud or anything, but this shows where they used a plate. I believe it was iron, either iron plate with salt, and we're pumping different levels of uh, vibration through the plate, through the metal plate, and you can see that as the frequency goes up, or it's a higher and higher frequency, the pattern becomes more and more complex. Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, let's turn the volume up. Here we go. Wow. Okay, talk to us about that. That was cool. That was so neat.
Yeah, so that is just showing as we move through. I'm very visual. Um I like to explain and show people and give people visual representations of how this actually works so that you can start to see. Um, so this is literally just the different frequencies. So you can see right there, it says 11820 hertz, so 1820 hertz. It's a specific, measurable vibration that is pumped through that steel plate that gives a specific pattern. And you can see that each of these different frequencies or hertz um, has a pattern that corresponds to it. So now, as we move forward, we're going to see what happens when you add this reality, that shape, that there is an actual shape to sound and light. We're going to see what happens when you add water and emotions to the equation. So if you want to go to the back to the presentation.
Yes. Gosh, this is just, these patterns are so neat. And I love too how
I
you,
know.
it's like the more high the frequency, and you can just see like the patterns go from being, they're still incredible even at their simplest form, but then you go towards the end and it's like, oh my gosh, like look at this. It's exquisite. Just all the different patterns that are in one pattern. It goes from being kind of simple to just this complex looking thing. That's really neat.
Yeah. 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 It's really, this is why the more that I started studying how how this material world that we live in, how this creation works, the more you learn how it actually comes together and how it's actually structured, the more in awe I become. The more it like will sometimes bring me to tears, because there's no denying the divinity in it. Only God could create something so magnificent and so unbelievably complex and beautiful. And you see these patterns um, all through nature, through everything. And so it really brings a lot of reverence.
It
Okay,
makes us
so
like fall in awe with ourselves again, it's so
yeah,
easy. Like I said in the intro, like we're taught, if you're not successful in business, you're nobody. If you don't wear this title, you're nobody. And it's like, oh my gosh, we're all just these walking miracles, so unaware of how amazing we actually are.
yeah, yes, exactly. Okay, so here we go.
This is
Now I'm giving a little bit more of a map. See, I like to just kind of, slow walk a little bit piece by piece, because we've been groomed in the Western way of learning in such a way that doesn't bring any of this into the forefront. And so I like to sort of take little baby steps as much as possible. But on the left, you'll see that this is essentially a map um, to the energetic system, the human body's energetic grid system. And as I explained before, there are approximately 72,000 subtle nervous channels that go through the body. From the ancient Indian perspective, these are called nadis. Energetic channel is called a nadi. In Chinese medicine, they're called meridians, but very similar things. The Chinese medicine and the ancient Indian, and also like the ancient Cherokee systems of how the human body is represented are very similar. But where three or more of these energetic channels intersect is called a marma point. And there are 108, well, 108, or some say 117 marma points in the physical body. Along the spine, we have these seven, basically they're called chakras, but what a chakra means is basically it's a nexus. It's where multiple of these channels intersect. You can think of it as, as yeah, a nexus, or a group of them where they all come together. and these are measurable, and each of these points in the body has an actual specific sound that corresponds to them. So you can start to see that even the human body is built and designed as an antenna and as um, a resonance chamber, a temple, really. Um, and the other piece that's left out a lot in modern day science is the electromagnetic field, and how electromagnetic fields have an impact on everything, how we actually create our own electromagnetic field, and how those electromagnetic fields can be impacted, and they can be seriously impacted with emotion, especially. Um, but when our body is linked up the way it was designed, meaning the mind is connected to the heart and the body, essentially it creates this big electromagnetic field around us that has a measurable impact on everything around us.
I love that. And that graphic is so neat too. I've read different things. I don't know exactly what is true because I haven't researched it as much as probably somebody like you has, but it's fascinating too, just understanding that our electromagnetic field, the capacity for it to expand is amazing and contract.
Yeah. Yes. And that's very affected by our emotional state. When we're in a state of fear, it gets very small. And then when we're in a state of love or compassion or joy, it's very expansive. One place, if you want to start to look at some of the science behind these measurable fields, or how the heart is actually very much the center of the body, more so than the brain. There is something called heart math. They've done a lot of study about on that, and heart math has actually connected up the fact that the earth itself has almost like a heartbeat. It's called the Schumann resonance. The earth in connection with the sun is like, think of it creating a circuit, like an electrical circuit, and that those resonances are actually directly connected to our heart as well. Our heart is very, very, very affected by the electromagnetic grid of the earth. And the electromagnetic grid and field of the earth is highly affected by the solar activity that comes in. So you could start to see we're all much more interconnected than we think we are.
Yes, 100%. And you think about too just how powerful this is. We look at ourselves, and again, we're so reduced to nothingness with how they want us to think of ourselves, but you think about the implications of everybody on this planet walking around with a low vibration and a very contracted electromagnetic field, and how that would impact the ground that we walk on or the things that we touch every day. And then you think on the opposite end, if everybody were to go in this state of love and compassion, and our electromagnetic field spread and we're bumping into each other and just creating this beautiful high vibration field that spreads all the way across the earth, and think about how that impacts where we walk and where our toes touch and where our fingers touch and who walks in our electromagnetic field and what that could do to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you can think of it, think of, we are made of water. And if you can think of water in its most solid state as ice, think of humanity's consciousness. And in a lot of people, their hearts are cold and their mind is cold, like ice. But as you add heat and love, you can move from the state of ice to a state of fluid water to a state of, of vapor. And that's really, so things can start to move. Things aren't so cold and solid and and a lot of growth and a lot of new ideas, a lot of I would foresee, as we come out of this and into more of the awakening process and more people come out of the fear, I would foresee a really great renaissance. I can't wait to see the things that get created as people remember just how powerful their heart is, the human heart. Um, I can't wait to see what we all create together out of a state of joy rather than a state of fear and control and domination.
Yes. There was before we move on, there was the study that I read. It was years ago. It had to have been 6, 7 years ago, but they did this experiment. I think it might have been on monks, but they had a group of monks meditate and think about love and compassion, these really powerful emotions. And they were somehow, I don't know how they study an electromagnetic field or tell, through technology. I know there's ways to, but however they were doing it, they were measuring the electromagnetic field and found that by meditating on those emotions and getting into a state where their frequency raised, their electromagnetic field expanded. I think they said like 10 or 12 miles. And I was
Wow.
like, holy smokes, that is crazy. And I wish I knew where it was. If I find it, I'll have to send it to you. And I didn't look to validate it, but I believe that I believe 1,000,000% that we have the ability to affect our surroundings so much more than we think we do.
Yeah, and and in fact, I can introduce you to someone that was involved in an experiment that's very famous, connected with transcendental meditation. So transcendental meditation is a method of meditation that was developed by someone named Maharshi Mahesh Yogi. Um, and he was actually not even a yogi, really. He wasn't really even like a holy man in India. He was a physicist. And so he did a lot of these experiments, using PET scans and using, you know, sophisticated equipment to measure the real world effects of large numbers of people coming together and doing some of these meditation practices. And there was one really famous one where 7,000 were gathered and they did this one specific practice called I think they're called the Siddhi practices, these very advanced meditation practices, and were able to actually affect the crime rate, um, I can't remember which city, but that it's all very well documented. Um, I will say also that those organizations have been highly infiltrated for a very long time. Um, the TM organization and some other ones like that have been highly infiltrated by the CIA and the FBI. And so again, why? And also by, the light side of the Luciferian Brotherhood is highly infiltrated into a lot of these, um, what are called yoga in the West, or the New Age lineages. Are A lot of them are very highly infiltrated, and part of the reason is because, as you're seeing, um, these teachings are actually very well. There's sort of a dual purpose. Number one is they keep anything from humanity that would empower humanity. If you learn that you can that God has designed our physical bodies to heal, and that you could do a lot with, natural food, just food, healthy food and breath and song, you're no longer as dependent on pharmaceuticals and the Western system. But then also there are very powerful techniques that they will use and then use for nefarious reasons as well. So um, when people start to realize just how powerful we are, just how God designed us to communicate with with divine, like for me, um the more I go in and I connect to the heart center and I talk to God and I operate from prayer first, and then move into the physical world, but first talk to God. You know, it's kind of a whole different way of operating than we've been taught to operate in the West.
I love that. And I love that you're helping remind us of all of this because we get so stuck in the physical world. It's all that, has been pushed on us our whole lives. And we forget to step into this world and to make that as much a part of our reality as, all the physical stuff that we own or have or live in or are just surrounded by every day.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to start to see what happens when we add the water. Okay, before we get there, actually, this is just a little bit of a more in-depth graphic of how the human body is designed and how it operates. And then now we bring in the music as well. So our body is also tuned to the musical scale. Literally these different nexi or nexuses, these different clusters of energetic channels that we call the chakra system, or they're like nodes of crisscrossing energetic channels. They also correspond to musical notes. So this is something that when you figure this part out, this is pretty profound. So I've actually played around with this. I've gotten a guitar tuner. And so remember the sound that corresponds with the heart is ooh. I've literally I'll get a guitar tuner. I'll put it at, whatever the correct hertz on the 432 hertz scale, and I'll make the sound that corresponds to a certain part of the body, and it helps to heal. Or for example, if I have a sore throat or something like that, just I would sing in the note that corresponds to G, that corresponds to that part of the body, and it helps to heal the body.
Now, let me ask you this. Is it more powerful if we are making the sound or if we, say, have a healing bowl in front of us that makes that sound? Or do they both impact us the same?
They both impact you, but from what I have found, that when I started to actually just make sounds myself, when I started to sing the prayers, a big part of how I healed from trauma was singing. And you can see why it would work. Not, and it wasn't just singing any old song. It was, certain prayers and certain ways of breathing and things like that. But just breath and sound are very, very powerful, powerful, powerful mechanisms. And you can see, if you understand this, you can use this for evil and control. Now think about how the music industry uses this knowledge in a bad way. They know specific patterns of sound that bring about a state of anxiety or fear or dis-ease in the body. And so you better bet those specific patterns of sound are pumped into the music. And it would affect you in a way that you wouldn't even necessarily know it consciously, but it's affecting, just so how you saw those hertz getting pumped onto that metal plate. Whether you know it or understand it or not, it has a physical effect. Yeah.
Wow. I was thinking that too about the music. If they completely changed it, and that's so many people, music they know connects to our heart. They know that music is something that no matter where you live in the world, it affects you. If you hear a good song, it just puts you in this like almost state of trance, it's like just this full body experience. And think about if we get into that experience listening to an out of tune song that does not have the correct frequency of these notes and like what that could do to our body. It opens up a whole different floodgate of looking at disease, like you said, and saying, Is it really there because of what the doctor says, or is it because we're out of tune, literally, just like a guitar, and how a guitar doesn't sound good if it's not in the right musical note tune?
Correct. Right. Okay. Now, when you add the emotions and the water to it, you're going to start to see a whole new thing. So, the next one is where we add the water. Okay. So, yeah, the first one, this is a really good explanation. Dr. Emoto is a very famous scientist that did these experiments with water, and this is a really good synopsis of them. It's 5 minutes, but it's definitely worth listening to it.
Let's do it. Okay, here we go.
This next series of photographs are the work of Japanese researcher Mr. Masaru Emoto from his book, The Message from Water. Mr. Emoto's work provides factual evidence that human vibrational energy, thoughts, words, ideas, and music affect the molecular structure of water. Please remember that water comprises over 70% of a mature human body and covers the same amount on our planet. Water is the very source of all life. This photo shows the beautifully formed geometric design of the Yushi Spring water. This next photo is from the Shimanto River, the last clean spring in Japan. Notice the extraordinary geometric forms. The fact that the molecular structure of water can be affected by our consciousness, our intent, and our sounds is extremely important. This photo is from the Mount Cook Glacier in New Zealand. Mr. Emoto has been visually documenting these molecular changes in water by means of his photographic techniques. He freezes droplets of water, then examines them under a dark field microscope that has photographic capabilities. His work clearly demonstrates the diversity of the molecular structure of water and the effects of the environment upon the structure of the water. This photo is from the fountain in Lourdes, France. This photo is from contaminated water from the Yodo River in Japan. In this photo, we can compare the contaminated water with clean stream water. Look at the difference. Mr. Emoto decided to see what effects music would have upon the structure of water. He placed distilled water between two speakers for several hours while playing different music and then photographing the crystals that formed after the water was frozen. This photo is of water being exposed to Beethoven's Pastorale. This photo is the effect of Bach's Air for the G string on the water. This photo is water exposed to Chopin's Farewell Song. This next photo is water being exposed and affected to music that was designed for healing. This photo is of water being exposed to the Kawachi folk dance. This photo shows the effect of heavy metal music upon the water. Here now we can compare the effects of healing versus heavy metal music and what happens to the water molecules. Mr. Emoto decided to see how thoughts and words affected the formation of untreated distilled water crystals by typing words onto paper and then taping this paper onto glass bottles overnight. This photo shows the effects of the words, "Thank you." This next photo shows the effects of the words, "love" and "appreciation." This photo shows the effects of the words, "You make me sick, I will kill you." And here we can compare the effects of "thank you" with the "you make me sick, I will kill you." very, very different geometric forms being incurred through the intention. Now, this photo is of a very polluted and toxic water from the Fujiwara Dam. Here now is the same water from the Fujiwara Dam after a Buddhist monk had offered a prayer over it. Prayer, that sound coupled with intention, seems to have an extraordinary ability of restoring water to its natural, harmonious, geometric symmetry. In this photo, we can compare the toxic water and then the effects of praying over the water.
Oh my goodness.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh, that almost makes me want to cry and like hold my
I know.
like, I love you, Emma. I appreciate you. I love all my little cells and I love all Andy's little cells. And it just makes you like want to hug yourself.
It's for real. One of the things that I did when I was learning how to practice self-love, someone gave me this exercise because that's one of the things that people have a hard time doing is practicing self-love. A lot of times people will love, give very, very much to others, but not to themselves. And so the little trick that I learned was to pray over my water and send all the love that I have, like for my animal or for my family, and just be like, send all of that love into it and then drink it, like psych.
I love that. And even like you think about how many people like are drinking tap water, and you see the contaminated water, what that does to a water cell molecule, molecules whenever they're frozen. You think about if a prayer can heal water, why wouldn't you pray over every drink? Especially if you're drinking tap water, maybe bottled water that you're not sure of. Like, what if that could heal the water as it's going in your body too?
It can. That's what I'm saying. When we realize how much our consciousness, our thoughts, our words, the sounds that we make, they have an actual real effect on everything around us. We're like, oh my gosh, wow, baby, we don't need all of these big tech, big pharma controllers. Maybe actually God gave us everything that we need. We don't need these people. We as humanity have everything we need.
Yes. Yes, and just the stark differences for people who are maybe listening and not paying attention a lot, just to the actual video, if you weren't able to, if you're driving or whatever, looking even at like heavy metal music versus healing music. I mean, those crystals that the water made from the heavy metal music and all the toxic thoughts and words that were said to them, it looked disgusting. Like it looked repulsive almost. Even the color looked kind of yellowish, and it had just this look to it that wasn't, beautiful, like what you'd think of with a crystal or what you normally think about with ice. And then whenever they were saying these, I love you, and these very positive affirmations and putting high frequency music, those crystals were so beautiful how they turned out and intricate, just like those, cathedrals, and just like the higher hertz sounds that we were looking at on the, the salt on the table earlier. Just the complexity has got so much more, even in a water form, the more complex and high frequency the sound was.
Yeah, and to give that as an example, the next two videos, one of them is a video that shows a lot of these effects on a lot of different things. That's just pretty cool. And then the solfeggio one, well, we can show that one after. The solfeggio one doesn't really have any sound. We can just kind of scroll through it. But this first one, the music and cymatics, it's pretty interesting. This this artist that is using these sciences basically in his music, which is pretty cool.
You bring this up.
And cymatics is basically the study of sound and how sound and frequencies affect matter.
And this one, we're going to play for you guys like a little bit over a minute, and then I'll turn the volume down just so we avoid any copyright things. But I'll link these few videos that Andi put. I'll link these in the show notes too, so you guys can actually go click and watch the whole thing. All right, here we go. Make sure this is that.
Film you're about to see has no characters. If you'll spare a little of your imagination, it is a film to describe to you the effect of cymatic frequencies on matter.
I'll turn down the sound a little bit.
Yeah, for the copyright. Yeah, if people want to listen to this, we just don't want to get a copyright strike, but it's pretty amazing.
I'll let it play though, and we can kind of talk about what we're seeing if you want.
Yeah, this one, this video, I liked to show it just to because it's more of a more of the electronic sound. You can see the shape of the sound, you know, versus the next one that we're going to show is the solfeggio frequencies. So you can just, I just wanted to give a little bit of an example visually between some, you know, how the different types of music actually have different shapes to them. But this one also is just, if you want to listen to it and just watch it on your own, it's pretty cool. He's using some very interesting technology in this video. It looks like he may be using some Tesla coil technology, something like that. So just some, it's just a pretty interesting one to watch, and how he plays with the sound and the music, and how the sound actually affects the matter. Really, it's just a good visual representation.
It's very, very well done. It looks so neat. And like the song is really cool too. It's like a song that you could go play in your car even and like jam out to. It's very catchy.
Yeah, I definitely do that. You know, sometimes you just gotta pump up the volume and roll down the windows. But then if you want to put the next one on, Emma, this is going to show the specific solfeggio frequencies pumped through water and what they look like. And when I say solfeggio frequencies, those are the like 432 hertz, the ones that are tuned to nature versus the 440 hertz.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. So this, and this one, if you want, this one you don't even have to put, there isn't really any sound in it at all. Excuse me, you can just sort of scroll if you want to scroll through it.
Okay. My computer's loading a little bit slow. Okay, let's look at some of these. Listen.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And these ones too, if you let it go a little bit and you go up higher, so further on in the video, you'll see as the frequencies go up higher, again, the patterns become more complex.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah.
If you're just listening, you have to go to YouTube or go in the show notes and watch these because these are freaking neat. Now let's scroll through these. Wow. It takes on, like, water goes from being like this flat, kind of shapeless blob to literally having like a 3D structure. Looks like tubes in some places, and 3D circles and squares, and like it's so neat, the geometry of what it turns into.
Yep. And then think of the fact that it seems to be programmable somewhat, meaning that it responds to sound, just like you saw Dr. Emoto, the water in the river before he took a picture, and then he prayed over that same water, and the prayer had an actual physical effect. So when we start to realize just how much power you have through prayer in a real physical way, this is not just like, oh, I believe and therefore blah, blah, blah. No, this is an actual physical effect that you have on your physical body and everything around you. So, you know, meaning if you can tune your instrument to grace, that then gets pumped out to everything around you, which is why we are our own energetic resonance chambers, pumping out whatever the frequency or the pattern or the shape of whatever our emotional spiritual state is at the moment. So think of how powerful it is to keep all of humanity in a really dense state of fear, like what a real impact that has. So the more of us that can say no to your fear, I see your fear, I raise you hope and faith and God and divinity, and let's create from that.
Oh, it's so powerful. This is such incredible information, Andi. And it's like you said, like somebody, if they had the right equipment, you could literally do this at your house. Like this isn't something that Andy's just pulling out from somewhere. Like this is real. You could do this and tune water, tune a solid form like salt or an ice crystal to a frequency. It's real.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Now,
So pretty.
okay.
I watch that all day.
Yeah, I know. There's more, but wait, there's more. To the if you go back to the presentation thing, yeah, the next page. So this maybe we can go over a little bit. This is just sort of a high level explanation of the technology of the language of Sanskrit. That's another thing that was messed with, was our language.
And we'll bring you back on again. I'd love to do like a full presentation on this part
yeah,
too.
that's kind of what I'm thinking. But just for now, you'll see that the language of Sanskrit actually is a reflection of the sounds of nature. And so it's structured that way, and there literally are specific sounds that correlate to all of these different points in the body. And this is reproducible. So this isn't something that is, you believe me about it. These are things that you do these practices and you will see the actual effect and how it all corresponds. But just as an example, that these 50 sounds are basically the 50 very pure building blocks of creation. And the way that the Sanskrit language works is, just like we're seeing, if you look under something in a microscope, under a microscope, you can see that it actually has a shape to the sound. The word in Sanskrit replicates the exact pattern of the shape of the sound of that thing in nature. So it's literally the sound of the thing. Does that make sense, or is that?
Yeah, it almost turns sound into a language versus just this kind of sense that we think that we have that just happens to be there, and that if we went deaf, we could live without it, and it brings a meaning to it and says, no, every sound has a particular meaning, or, a sound is.
Yeah, it's a sound has an actual, yeah, I know what you're saying. It like has an actual thing that it corresponds to, where in English it's just a label. Like
yes.
this is not just a label. For example, there's a pattern in nature that corresponds to joy, and the word in Sanskrit replicates that pattern of that thing in nature. Or the word, the word in Sanskrit for apple, for example, replicates the subatomic pattern of the sound of apple.
Yes, it like gives a language to it without a word necessarily, but it makes it more than, like you said, everything. Just if you hear a noise, that's all that we really describe noise as. Like, it's loud, it's soft, it's a noise, it's a sound, it's faint, but we don't actually correspond it to anything that's making the noise, right? And so you're saying,
Right.
no, like every sound has something that is associated with it in nature.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yes.
That reminds me, I had listened to this podcast years ago, and it really made me think about the world that we live in. I was living in Las Vegas at the time when I was listening to it, and this guy for years went out into nature and would just set up a camera and would record sound wherever he was at, and realized that in the most healthy ecosystems, you hear so many different layers of sounds. And you can tell when you're in an unhealthy environment because you go out and you might hear cars, you might hear businesses, you might hear people talking, but you don't hear what you're saying, the sounds of nature. You don't hear the birds, you don't hear the wind, you don't hear leaves rustling, you don't hear all the different, bugs, frogs, whatever it is. And he was saying basically what you were, that every sound comes together to make this orchestra that either raises or lowers the vibration of the planet. Like, and without those sounds, it affects us, because those sounds, like you were saying, directly resonate with our individual cells. And so when we're taken away from those and we're put into a big city and all we hear is cars and businesses and, these sounds that aren't natural in nature, it naturally lowers our own vibration.
Yes, exactly. Bingo. Exactly.
Oh my gosh. It's
and then it's in a cube. Remember, it's in a cube. It's not. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I was like, I feel so disconnected from that whenever I lived in Las Vegas, because it's just a city, and I felt so much more harmonious, and like I have so much more energy now being in a place where I can go out in nature and experience that. I really do think, just on a personal level, it makes so much difference.
Yeah, totally. It definitely does. It's okay, so this one I love to teach, at least because the way that I was taught is that this way of saying the mantra Om is actually a purification tool for the nervous system. So you know how I've been explaining that these sounds actually correspond to different parts of the body. The ah sound, ah, you can actually feel it when you make it, corresponds to the lumbar spine. Okay. The ooh sound corresponds to the thoracic spine or the heart. And then there's that sound, the M with the dot on the top. The sound is like the buzzing of a bee. It sounds like this. That sound literally corresponds to the pineal gland, and it helps to decalcify the pineal gland. So when you make these three sounds together, it's it's purifying the nervous system. So that's one of the technologies, for example. So for example, if you even if you don't want to purify the whole nervous system, but you want to decalcify the pineal gland, make the buzzing of a bee sound. Do it 5 times, not even, you could even 5 or 6, 7, 8 times in a row for 2 or 3 minutes total. You will feel the effects. You will feel it immediately. And one of the things that it does is it starts to decalcify the pineal gland, and it also releases positive neurotransmitters like oxytocin and endorphins, positive endorphins into the nervous system, just making that sound.
Wow, I've heard of Om, but I never realized that it was 3 separate sounds until I learned from you, and I was like, "Gosh, that is so powerful."
In
Um,
Sanskrit, the letter O is A plus U. The A plus the U, short A plus short U together equals O. So this is that, just like drawn out, the ah drawn out and the oo drawn out and the M drawn out. It's a way of chanting it. It's a way of doing, but literally, like, this is a way of purifying the nervous system. And so when I started doing these practices, I started to see the results, actually. And what I would notice is that um, the uh, I was able to work, my whole body started to slowly, this is slow, and there are no quick fixes. But if you start to apply these teachings, I slowly and surely, my body started healing. My nervous system started to working together. I started to be able to hear and perceive, or um, go into maybe different states of prayer. Let's just say, it just brings more health, in my experience, honestly, to sort of reconnect the whole system in a very natural way. And then um, by doing those things, I was taught first, basically first, you purify the system, get yourself into a state where the two hemispheres of the brain are working together, and then you sit and you pray. So that's how I was taught to use this technology. I like to call it technology because really it is.
yeah, and
Does
I
that
love
make sense, or is that too esoteric?
No,
Is
it
it too
totally makes
fluid?
sense. It's like you said, before we had all of this Western intervention in our health, what did people do? They weren't taking pills. They weren't, eating processed food. They were in nature. They were singing up fires, outside, making instruments, just very disconnected from everything that we're very connected to. And those people that still exist in those less civilized environments that we've seen in the world are the healthiest people in the world. And they don't have the Western intervention. So it's like, we think that all these advances are helping us, and it begs the question, is it really? I think there's definitely certain circumstances where Western medicine is very helpful, but we're taught that that's the only thing to rely on, that if we don't, that we aren't going to heal. And what I love what you're bringing to mind is it's very empowering. Once again, take your power back. We have everything that we need within us, and if we just literally tune our bodies to the right frequencies, we could not only affect positive change within us, but without us too.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um,
So fascinating.
it's very profound, and the thing too with this knowledge that I learned, it's there is no word for religion in Sanskrit, actually. So the knowledge, there are religions that have spun out of this knowledge. Buddhism spun out of it. Um, Hinduism spun out of it. There's various uh, religions that have taken certain pieces of this knowledge and created a religion out of it. But the knowledge in and of itself is not a religion. It's just an observation of, like, oh, look at this. It's just, this is, it's more of a science, really. Um, so there's no there's no there's really, in the pure science, the actual, this is, from about 50,000 years ago from ancient India. And also the native Cherokee teachings have this knowledge too. They just have slightly different words for it, but they teach very much the same thing, which is why a lot of, like, the Cherokee culture and healing modalities are around sweat lodge, for example. You heat up the water and you pray, and the medicine man heats up the water, says the prayers, and you go in and you can see now that I've been explaining how the prayer, the water, the intention all has a very real world effect, that how things that to us sound crazy in the West, like sweat lodge, how they actually are very real healing modalities.
Yes, it's like I was saying in the intro, like they have taken the divine out of us and out of our environments. And so when you do that for so many generations, it just eventually seems crazy to think about that something like this could be real because we're so far detached from it.
Right. If you want to go to the next slide, Emma, just to kind of show the last two that I included. One is the monks chanting with the solfeggio, chanting Om, that I just explained what that Om mantra does. And so
Yes.
you can see it. You'll be able to see it now.
Oh, how neat. Let me turn the volume. Okay, here we go.
See what it does?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, even how it like grows, it's like you said, the three syllables. And when you have one, it's kind of small. And then as it adds, it just expands and becomes more complex once again, the same pattern that we've seen with the ice and the sound and everything.
And then the final one is a native prayer, and it shows what that looks like.
Let's make this full screen. All right, here we go.
I don't know if there's going to be a
What was that?
I was just hoping that we wouldn't get a copyright, but or something.
Oh yeah, I guess I could turn it down a little bit.
But yeah, it's so isn't it beautiful? So you can this is why I'm constantly listening to like worship music, or I love listening to gospel music. And so you really are, when you go into a state of prayer, just like you were talking about earlier, you can see how you go from fear to love. It actually has a real effect on everything around you.
I'm going to expand that. And it brings to mind, if I can, it brings to mind too, just the theme of this show, child abuse, right? The importance of saying, I love you, the importance of being in a state of love, of being in a state of compassion, of no matter what, embodying these emotions, not just because we know what it does internally to us, but because we understand that words have literal physiological implications that can literally be, our words are like spells that can be literally cast on somebody else's body. You think about talking down to a child, or a child who doesn't hear that they're loved and who hears all these negative things from an abuser and what that does to their body physically. And all you survivors, almost every survivor of traumatic abuse that I've met has had some type of physical issue that they've dealt with, whether it's like you, where you've had multiple surgeries and so many things that seemed so impossible to overcome from your health, or if it's somebody who has, anxiety their whole life. And it's like, you wonder why people have these things, and just the importance of understanding how we talk to somebody, even if they're sleeping. You think about looking at like a little dog or a baby while they're sleeping. They might not be consciously awake, but you even just telling their little bodies, I love you, I appreciate you, their cells in the water is listening to that. Like, their body's listening, whether or not they are consciously listening or understanding. The body knows exactly what it's being told. That just blows my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, isn't it amazing? That's why part of why I think so much of this type of knowledge is hidden, because when people realize just how much we really do have the power. I mean, the thing is, where people get it twisted is it's like, it's not that I have the power and I'm all powerful. It's that God created us to work in harmony with God and with these unbelievably beautiful, like, look at how beautiful it is that God designed. We're meant to work in harmony with that, not to go thinking that we are our own God. God literally built us to be able to be in communication with him at all times. But, we're built that way. We're built to be, I guess, what creators of. We can literally choose what we want to create and put out in the world. And so why not choose to tune your very real powerful instrument with grace and love and pump that out, and then let's see what develops in the material world based on that equation.
Yes, exactly. And even going, thinking about the music once again, like, we could have music, or we could be somewhere where really toxic music is playing in the background and we're not listening to it. Maybe we're at a restaurant, we're talking to somebody, but you see that water doesn't have to have our conscious brain in order to have a reaction and in order to receive the message of that frequency. And so again, just like how you were saying, you're very careful about what kind of music you listen to. We all should be, because even if we're not listening consciously to what's around us, your body literally knows, and it blows my mind just thinking about how much we should all just go give ourselves a big hug and hug every single being around us, and just embody that love, understanding just how powerful it is. They don't want us to know how powerful we are. And this just shows like how magical is this? It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
That's why, we don't need to be dependent on these controllers that are trying to control and manipulate society. Humanity, even in my experience, and I've experienced the worst of humanity, not even the worst, but some of the worst. I know that others have had worse experiences even than I have, but still, in my experience, 90% of humanity is good. Humanity is good. We have everything we need to work together.
And we all just need to be re-empowered with the knowledge of how amazing we actually are. It's no wonder so many people are walking around depressed, or walking around sick, or walking around, just very, very unhealthy and diseased and dysfunctioning, and it's, look at everything we surround ourselves with. Look at the music that we're constantly bombarded with. Look at the messages that we tolerate from people around us that supposedly love us, Look how we talk to ourselves. And it's like, gosh, if we're just, that to me is like the ultimate self-love. When you realize how much you're affected, and anything that goes against that, you're able to say it's not for me. Gosh, that music doesn't make me feel good. I'm not going to listen to it. You're being mean to me, and I know that it's affecting my body, so I'm not going to have you in my life anymore. There's so many ways that I feel like it helps us take our power back, understanding all of this. Because if we truly understood how powerful our thoughts are, our words are, and how powerful all the words and thoughts are that are around us, we'd fall to our knees, and we'd never speak a bad word to ourselves or anybody else ever again, understanding how powerful it is.
Yeah. Yep. And also how powerful we are when we're not in a state of fear. That literally the demonic, dark entities feed on that fear. And that if you just bring a tiniest spark of a candle, it decimates that darkness. Like, they really are more afraid of us than we need to be of them.
Yes.
That grace and the love of God and the light of God. And I personally say, I'm not a follower of organized religion per se, just because in my experience, so much of it is so infiltrated at this time in history. But I'm a follower of Jesus. I follow Jesus. And I know there's good churches out there and stuff. I just personally am a little, it's just so much is so infiltrated right now that it's unfortunate. But I look forward to the day when all of that darkness is rooted out, and we can, go into those buildings and maybe use them the way that they were originally designed. Those beautiful buildings that, probably are actually healing chambers. Maybe we can use them for humanity again, because I don't think that they're being utilized for what they were meant for right now.
100%. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So with this is like this prayer, it's not just some, airy fairy thing. This is very real. So I can't wait for more and more and more people to just have the realization of how much you can have a very real effect just with prayer and
Yes.
words and song and sound. It's very real.
And I mean, some of what we saw was just involving like one person, the one video was one person prayed over the water and changed it. Imagine if 5, 10, 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, 1,000,000,000 people were praying at the same time, and what that would do. It starts to make you think of things so much differently.
Yes, if we could have synchronized prayer, Like, imagine if we all just one at a certain time once a day, all just were in that moment together of prayer, how much that would reverberate out. But we can start small.
Yep.
Yeah.
Healing the world really does start with healing ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, we're so, again, we think we live in a physical world, and we do in some ways, you know, but it's like you were saying, the physical world is created by what we create on the inside. It comes to life on the outside. And so if we're never looking on the inside and we're not paying attention to that and we're only focused on the outside, nothing beautiful is ever going to be created. It's just going to keep lowering the frequency.
Yeah. Yeah.
How
So
neat. Is there more to
thank you
this?
so
Oh,
much. Just some pretty pictures.
I'll too, if you want. I'll put this playlist. I think that's awesome. You compiled a playlist of healing music. So I'll put that in the show notes for anybody who wants to start jamming out in their car with the windows down. I'll put Andy's playlist up so you guys can go start listening to some actual high frequency music.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Is there anything
So
else in this presentation? Okay, it looks like that's the end
that's
of
it.
it. Oh man, that's so amazing. I'm so grateful you put that together. Those visuals and that music, that was all incredible.
It's my pleasure.
And I'd love, I know you've been working on a project on the side. Before we kind of tie up for today, I'd love to talk about that as much as you're able to with people, because it's really exciting. And there's definitely room to go around for people who want to participate. So let's talk about some of the stuff that you've been working on behind the scenes, Andy girl.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I'm really excited is there are a number of survivors that we've all been working together behind the scenes, you know, because there isn't really anywhere that's, well, not, there aren't a lot of safe places for survivors to go, actually. There just aren't. Because you don't know if therapists or doctors or are involved or corrupt. It's so basically we just have been helping each other. Just like angels like Emma have been allowing for that to happen, is for survivors literally across the globe to connect and share stories and see that we all have such similar things that have happened, even though we're not even in the same country, you know. And so one of the things that's come out of this is we're writing a song called Spiritual Warrior, and we're asking for survivors that want to participate to, they can either help write lyrics, or they can, if they're musically inclined, we're asking for any survivors that want to be involved to reach out. But basically we're creating a song and a music video that will have all survivors of human trafficking, SRA, MK Ultra, and supporters of survivors like you, Emma. So it just kind of it was delivered. It's like came to me when I was praying. That's a lot of times things happen like that. I just had this, like, I just got this picture in my head of that. And so we're collaborating with Emma, and then also Aquarius Rising Africa is going to be helping too. So I'm excited. So if there is anyone that would like to be involved or help us out, please reach out, because I don't know what I'm doing. I've never written a song before, but it's coming little by little.
That's so exciting. You know what I love most about it, aside from it being a survivor-led endeavor, I love that singing, theater, that was something that was in your background. And I find a lot of survivors were very gifted in some type of entertainment aspect, whether it was dance, being a professional dancer, being a professional singer, being very inclined to play instruments, or a mixture of those things, or acting, whatever it is. And I love that you're taking something that a lot of you never got to explore that in a way that was healthy for you. You were around a lot of people who took advantage of those gifts and exploited them. And I love seeing it turned around. And again, you're taking your power back and saying, I'm going to use my gifts for what they are intended to be used for, the way that God made them to be used for, not for the way that, you know, I was exploited to use them for. So I'm just so excited. This is so neat, Andi.
Me too. And I'm honored that you are going to be a part of it, Emma. Thank you so much for everything that you do. You really are a godsend.
It's my honor. It's the least I could do. I always say, you know, you guys are the ones who went through all of these things, and I'm so sorry. None of you ever deserved it. Nobody going through it now deserves it. It needs to be gone from this planet. The thing, however, that brings me light going through all of this is seeing what all of you are creating from the things that you went through. And if you went through it, the least that me and everybody else can do is listen and learn. We have the easy end of that. You know, it's never easy to hear these stories, but we all need to know what our reality actually is. We've been lied to about it, and all of your voices are so important. That's why they've been silencing you your whole life. So thank you for your courage to come out. This stuff's never easy to talk about. I'm sure even talking about something like today, it's a very positive conversation, but it stems from you learned all of this not because maybe you wanted to, but because you had to in a lot of ways growing up, you know. So I'm so proud of you for taking it and turning it into something beautiful and empowering, and for all that you do, Andi. You're one of the biggest cheerleaders ever for every survivor. You wear your own heaviness with your own story, and you're still uncovering so much of your own life. But you're the first one out there championing and supporting every other survivor and every other survivor ally. You're the first to step up and educate and do podcasts. And I'm just so proud of you and so honored to know you. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
And
It
where
really means a lot.
where can people find you, contact you, whether they want to just follow your content and support you, or for survivors or allies who might want to get involved with the music, video, or song?
People can go to weboflifeworldwide.com, or you can reach me. I am on Truth Social. My other ones, you know, it's sort of a who knows if I'll be censored from day to day. Well, you've seen that. I created a bunch of Twitter profiles that kept getting taken down, so I sort of gave up on that. But I do have a backup on Facebook. That's just as it's a small account. My larger account got completely taken down. So mainly Truth Social right now is the best place. And my handle is at Quanyin 108, QUANYIN 108. And yeah.
Well,
But
put
also
all of that-
webofworldwide.com has a lot of information, and my email is in there if you want to be involved with the music project. You can email me, or like I said, you can reach out through Truth Social as well. I think you can do that, or Telegram. I think I can give you a link of my links in it, Emma. I think you might
Correct.
have that, my link tree.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah. A link tree would be awesome because it just kind of consolidates everything. You have one of those. I'm pretty sure I posted it on other shows that you've done with me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I'll put
So
that below, and people can just
yeah,
go scroll through.
there you go. But yeah.
Amazing. You guys, please go support Andi if you aren't already. I know a lot of you that watch this show might watch Aquarius Rising or Chantel's show. So you've gotten to see Andi, and hopefully you guys have already connected with her. But if you're new here, I'll link her playlist below so you guys can go listen to her testimony and the other episodes she's done here. And I'll link a lot of the links that we showcased today on today's show, along with her healing playlist of amazing music that she's compiled for you. Go follow her on Truth Social. Go follow her on all of the links that you'll see on Linktree. Check out her website. There's so many amazing resources on there at weboflifeworldwide.com. So go check that out. Check out her survivor stories and everything. And please reach out if you're a survivor. Get involved with this new project. It's a really special time for collaboration, and we see how powerful it is when positive, like-minded people come together and do something positive together, how that affects us and how it affects our surroundings. We just went over that today. So this is going to be a really powerful project, getting so many amazing people together and proclaiming the same message together. So I'm so excited to see this evolve. Andi, thank you as always for being here. It's such an honor to have you. And for everybody listening, God bless you, and we will see you next week.